Hello, everyone, and welcome to the State of U.S. Academic Libraries Findings from the ACRL 2023 Annual Survey. My name is Gina Parsons Diamond. I am the ACRL Program Manager for Data and Research. Additionally, I'm joined by ACRL Academic Library Trends and Statistics Editorial Board member Celia Rabinowitz from Keene State College, and she'll be assisting me in the Q&A at the end of this presentation. So what we're going to be talking about today, first, we're going to go through the history and the content of the ACRL survey. Then we'll dive into the 2023 survey results, talk a little bit about how your institutions can take action with this data, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So ACRL has engaged in gathering academic library statistics in some form since 1942. As the current iteration of this long-standing work, the Academic Library Trends and Statistics Survey provides a valuable data set to facilitate many uses for academic libraries. This data collection effort is particularly critical at this moment as we face the prospect of the National Center for Education Statistics, or NCES, eliminating the academic library component from the IPEDS survey. ACRL survey includes all the questions from the IPEDS academic library component, along with additional measures that can help libraries tell their impact stories, including a trends section. And this year we also have a special section on accessibility. So make sure you fill that out if you are doing it. In the standard survey, these are the topics that we cover: staffing, materials and operations expenses, library collections, library services, and local and library characteristics. While the editorial board that oversees the survey has a preference for inaction to allow longitudinal data to be available across as many years as possible, we do update the survey every year with small changes to make sure it's current and easy to respond to. So the changes that were made for the 2023 survey include a new reporting structure section, and that's questions 0A and B, to collect information about whether institutions include law or medical libraries, and special cases where maybe those libraries have a separate IPEDS ID and are reporting separately. Additionally, we removed questions 45A through C, which covered external contributions from consortia, networks, or systems. And finally, we updated the library circulation and usage questions to more closely align with the required IPEDS reporting. As I've said, the survey is overseen by the ACRL Academic Library Trends and Statistics Survey Editorial Board. This is an ACRL volunteer group that develops the trends questions and works to revise the survey instrument as needed to better align with IPEDS, reduce response burden, and better meet the needs of the field. And I just want to say thank you so much to this volunteer group. They do a lot to keep the survey in the excellent condition it's in, and we at ACRL appreciate all the work they do on that. All of our survey results back to 1998 are housed in the online tool Benchmark Library Metrics and Trends. Benchmark makes data-driven planning and advocacy easy for academic libraries. You can use Benchmark to analyze trends in expenditures, staffing, and other data, as well as illustrate ongoing activities and usage in a compelling fashion for different audiences. The tool can also generate key metrics for strategic planning, budget justifications, annual reports, fundraising, and more. All academic libraries in the US have complimentary access to Benchmark, which allows them to enter survey response data, see their historical survey responses, and view high-level summary charts. If you want to subscribe to the tool, which is an annual fee, subscribers also get access to a robust set of interactive data dashboards with visualizations and filters, a custom report builder that includes historic metrics, and the ability to create custom peer groups for benchmarking. So if you haven't logged into your benchmark account, I encourage you to do that today. My colleague Brian Lim has popped the link into the chat. So now we're going to go ahead and jump right into the 2023 survey results. So we know that academic libraries provide essential services that support research and student success in higher education. To help track the nature and quantity of those services, ACRL fields our annual survey. It collects key metrics on academic library staff, expenditures, collection, circulation, and information services. The data collected can help librarians, administrators, and stakeholders assess the impact of academic libraries, make peer comparisons, and track trends over time. And all of these survey results can be found in our formal report, the State of U.S. Academic Libraries. It's a PDF that's available to anyone who wants to access it. So if you're interested in the full report, the link will be in the chat. So for the 2023 survey, we had 3,125 U.S. institutions who were invited to participate, and 1,414 of those completed the survey, which is a 45.2 response rate. This response rate is comparable to previous years. By Carnegie classification, which is the way we look at the high-level data, associates colleges and special focus institutions are underrepresented, while master's and doctoral universities are overrepresented among respondents. The results presented here will reflect the survey respondents of our voluntary sample and may not be representative of all academic institutions. So a big metric we like to track is total full-time staff. Library services depend on staff time and expertise, and staff fulfill roles essential to the teaching, learning, and research missions of higher education institutions, from facilitating access to information to teaching skills that students and researchers need to find and use that information. The U.S. institutions responding to our survey in 2023 have an average full-time equivalent, or FTE, library staff of 36.2 and a median of 15.7. This represents a slight increase from recent years, but has not yet returned to pre-pandemic levels. Again, by Carnegie classification, doctoral universities stand out as having much higher staffing levels than any other type of institution. Overall, for institutions that reported both total staff FTE and student FTE, the ratio of students to library staff is 192. Associates colleges and two-year institutions have the lowest average total staff at 11.4, but the highest ratio of student to staff FTE at 375, which is almost double the rate for all institutions. Next, we're going to talk about full-time equivalent staff as by type as a percentage of the total. So FTE staff are reported in 4 categories: librarians, other professional staff, student assistants, and all other paid staff. Overall, librarians make up about a third of the total reported staff FTE, and institutions reported an average of 12 FTE librarians, the same as in 2022. Other professional staff are about 12.9%, student assistants are 23.8%, and all other staff are 29.6% of the total reported. By Carnegie class, associates colleges and two-year universities have the highest proportion of librarians as a percentage of their total staff FTE, while baccalaureate and master's granting institutions have a higher proportion of student assistants. So now we're going to look at the average and median reported total expenditures. So for this chart, we're looking at those average and median reported total expenditures, which exclude fringe from 2015 to 2023, and these are adjusted for inflation. So we're looking at everything in 2023 dollars. Overall, total academic library expenditures show signs of recovering from pandemic lows. Among respondents in 2023, the average total expenditures, excluding fringe, reached almost $4 million, and the median was over $1 million. In reported dollars, this represents the highest point since 2015. However, when adjusted for inflation, average and median expenditures have largely declined over time. The average expenditures for doctoral universities are over 16 times that of associate colleges or two-year institutions, and expenditures per student FTE are 4 times higher at doctoral universities. Okay, this chart is for the detailed expenses as a percentage of the total expenditures, again, excluding fringe. In this chart here, the dark green bar is the percentages spent on ongoing commitments to subscriptions. And this chart only includes institutions that reported expenses in the 3 major categories. So on the ACRL survey, library expenditures can be broken down into 3 major categories: staff salary and wages, which makes up the largest proportion of the total at 45.1%. Material and services expenditures are a close second at 44.4%. And other operations and maintenance expenditures are 10.5%. Associates colleges spend their largest proportion of their budgets on staff, 75.8% at associates colleges, and much less on materials and services. Looking in closer detail, a significant portion of the materials and services expenditures go towards those ongoing commitments to subscriptions. These costs comprise 34.9% of total reported expenditures. So that's a huge portion of library expenses going to ongoing commitments to subscriptions. By institution type, those in the category of other, which includes special focus 4-year institutions, law and medical libraries, spend the highest proportion on ongoing subscription costs at 45.1%. The proportional spending on this by doctoral, master's, baccalaureate, and associate institutions are in line with previous years. Another large portion of the data collected in the survey is on collections. And as you probably all know, digital materials have become an increasingly important part of library resources. As of 2023, They comprise 47% of reported library collection holdings. Doctoral institutions are the only type where more than half of their holdings are physical materials, likely due to their large, long-standing research collections. The size of doctoral universities' collections and their overrepresentation among the survey sample skews the picture for all institution types. For institution of all non-doctoral institution types, digital materials represent more than 80% of total collection size, and only a very small number of responding institutions, 7 out of that about 1,400, report having no physical collections. So even though collections are moving digital, very few institutions have no physical collections at all. And obviously with collections comes circulation. While libraries still hold significant physical collections and those collections continue to have value to researchers, most circulation is digital. Only 1.6% of total reported circulation is physical items. Baccalaureate colleges have the highest percentage of physical circulation at 3.2%. But overall, reported circulation rates have dropped significantly in 2023. The average across all respondent institutions is 620,488, and circulation per student FTE is 105. Both figures represent the lowest reported rates since 2015, and it's really unclear why. But average physical circulation in 2023 has increased somewhat relative to the last 2 years, but it has decreased by 51% relative to 2019. While average digital circulation reported is lower in 2023 than 22 or 21, it has increased 153% relative to 2019. So since 2019, physical circulation has decreased by 50% and digital circulation has increased by over 150%. And obviously a large part of the library's work is providing information services to individuals. And that's because library staff share expertise through information services for individuals and instruction for groups. For individuals, reference transactions and consultations are broadly defined as information contacts involving the knowledge, use, recommendations, or instruction in one or more resources by a library staff member. In 2023, U.S. academic libraries reported an average of 3,675 annual transactions, 397 consultations, and 1,342 virtual reference services. And those virtual services may include both transactions and consultations. Of the total information services to individuals reported, 77.3 are transactions, which includes walk-ups at service points and interactions via phone, email, or chat. 8.1 of the total are consultations, which are appointments with staff or specialists on subject matter experts. 14.6% of the total reported information services to individuals were reported as transactions and or consultations, which means that institution was unable to separate their information services. And in addition to providing information services to individuals, libraries also provide presentations to groups. The reported average number of annual presentations to groups is and the average total attendance at those presentations represent an increase over the last 3 years, though these figures still lag relative to pre-pandemic levels. While the majority of reported group instruction happens synchronously, that's just about 61%, a significant portion is asynchronous at 38%. Asynchronous presentations are more common amongst associates and master's colleges, while doctoral universities have the lowest percentage of asynchronous presentations. And this is the last chart we're going to look at today, which is the average total attendance at presentations to groups from 2015 to 2023. Institutions that reported both the total number of presentations and the total attendance have an attendance per presentation rate of 14.4%. So that's almost 15 students per presentation. For institutions that reported both total attendance and FTE, the rate of student attendance per presentation is 0.6 overall, with limited variation by Carnegie class. And this figure that we're looking at shows the trend in average total presentation attendance over time. The trend follows largely the same pattern across all institution types, with a dip in 2021, but a subsequent recovery. And I do see some questions. So before we talk about taking action, I will pause to see what can we respond to now. Okay, Sarah asks, how is the ACRL Statistics Editorial Board selected? Are ACRL members serving on other editorial boards excluded from participation? The board is selected by the Publications Coordinating Committee, which oversees all ACRL editorial boards, and they pull from the list of volunteers, which you can fill out that form online if you're interested in volunteering for the editorial board. They try to prioritize diversity across position, title, and Carnegie class and geographic area in selecting volunteers for the board. Okay, Sarah also asks, now that iPads will not have an academic library section, how will the ACRL statistics survey change? We don't anticipate any major changes to the ACRL survey in the next few years, as all of the iPad's academic library component questions are already included in our survey. As always, we encourage as many institutions as possible to complete our survey. The more data we have, the better picture of the state of academic libraries and the better advocacy we can do. Peter asks, in the library staffing chart, is student worker staffing included? Let's go back. So yeah, you can see here, library staff FTE by type. This light, or the gray bars at the right, are student workers. Stefan or Stephen, I'm not sure, asks, is there any guidance in aligning ACRL stats and the READ scale, which is reference effort assessment data? It would be nice if SpringShare could have a simple way to track ACRL stats. I'm not familiar with the READ scale. Celia, could you maybe speak to this?
I don't really know a whole lot about it. I think it's an interesting. I think we try to want to minimize how many different other reports we're trying to align with, but given the particular and perhaps peculiar sort of place we're in right now, it might be worth our looking at some of the other reports. I know, just really quickly, we went out and did some asking among our groups. I talked with other smaller college library directors about the ACRL survey and iPads, and I was surprised to find out that many of them submitted iPads, obviously because we have to, and don't do ACRL. So I hope that as we move forward, if the library survey falls away, and I don't think that decision has been absolutely made, but I think it's more of a decision now about whether iPads retains it and what happens to iPads in general, that more folks will look to the ACRL survey, which is really very similar. But I think I'm going to make a note of this, and maybe we'll bring it up at the next meeting.
Thank you. And then Sarah asks, where are the data definitions documented? They are in the instructions for the survey, which can be found both in benchmark under the resources tab and on the ACRL statistics libguide, which I've just linked in the chat for you. And then Randy suggests it would be nice if ACRL provided averages for our type of institution as part of their free statistics when we log in, rather than the national average. We can definitely have the editorial board discuss that.
This might also be a good time to mention that we've also talked at our most recent meeting, which was last week, I think, or the week before, about providing weighted results data, which would change what you're seeing on the screen here, right? For those libraries that, and I just want to mention as a plug, if you're thinking about accessing benchmark, or you're thinking about it being even at, it's a very reasonable cost, but if it's more than what your library can afford, there is an option to pay for 1 month at a time. And that is much more affordable. And I'd like to suggest that that might be a solution for some folks. The weighted, if we proceed by presenting weighted results, then it'll be easier for all of us to see something that looks more familiar to us than what we're seeing in the averages here.
Thank you, Celia. And then Amanda asks, could there be an alternative question to gate count to measure use? Your library doesn't have a gate counter and you're in a mixed use building. Yes, we're seeing more and more libraries being in mixed use buildings. So as we move forward, the editorial board will definitely take that into consideration. Okay, thank you all for those excellent questions. We will have more time at the end, but
Well, I'm just going to grab that last question, which is I can't remember the cost right off the top of my head, and it's also but it's I can't remember even, Gina, if it's done by tiers.
It is $630
Right.
annually, and a 10% discount is available for survey participants, with an additional stackable 10% discount for ALA organizational members.
Right. And I would say the advantage is it's very robust, and it has wonderful functionality for you to create peer groups. So if you belong to a peer, my college belongs to the Council of Public Liberal Arts Colleges that are all over the country, or if you have a state group. And so you can create lots of different groupings of libraries that are similar and do comparisons that way. So the functionality is pretty robust, and it gives you a lot of flexibility.
Yes, and speaking of the functionality, I want to talk about how you can use this data to take action at your institution. So the ACRL Trends and Statistics Survey provides the most up-to-date picture of the state of academic libraries in the US. The overview of the 2023 findings presented here and in the report are intended to facilitate further exploration and research. Library staff and stakeholders can use the data in many ways. Possibility and questions to consider include advocacy. So that's evidence about current library services and comparisons across institutions of different types. Helps advocates make the case for the value of academic libraries and the funding and support they need to be successful. And then benchmarking and peer comparisons. So in case you're not familiar, benchmarking is the process of comparing your organization's performance with that of its peers for the purposes of improvement, decision-making, strategic planning, and advocacy. Who are your library's peers by Carnegie classification or other institution characteristics? How does your library's performance compare to that of its peers in the core service areas that we just discussed? Using percentage of total calculations and ratio values, for example, per student FTE, per staff FTE, in particular, it can help you make comparisons to other institutions while accounting for differences in institution size or budget. Speaking of budgets, budget justifications are a great way to use the benchmark data. Some questions to consider would be, how do your library's expenditures compare to those of your peers? If, for example, the library's budget has declined relative to the institution expenditures and size of the student body over time, that could help you demonstrate that the library may need more resources to better support student success. Looking at the proportion of expenditures going towards staff and subscriptions over time can help you understand how budgets have changed. You can also use this data for grants. In identifying institutional, state, or federal funding priorities, you can use the data from this survey and other related sources to bolster grant proposals. This evidence can help demonstrate the reach or effectiveness of current library services and programs. It can also demonstrate the impact of grant-funded initiatives. For example, if a goal of a grant proposal at your institution is to increase student engagement with the library, future years of survey data may show that result through an increase in information services provided to individuals or groups. The data is also great for internal assessments and improvements. What do the usage trends at your individual library look like over time? Are there things that you could be doing differently to improve services for your users? Or where are you still seeing challenges emerging from the pandemic? Exploring your library's data and understanding how it relates to national patterns can help identify areas for improvement as well as existing strengths. And if you're doing other library and information research, data from the ACRL survey can be analyzed in conjunction with other national data sets or qualitative studies to explore further research. And again, staffing justifications. This is great again. How does your library's staffing and staff expenditures compare to its peers? What is the ratio of library staff, particularly librarians and professional staff, to students? If you see that your institution has a higher number of students relative to each staff member and less of your library's budget is spent on staff relative to its peers, and those gaps widen over time, you could help push back against the argument that your library is overstaffed and suggest that your library may even be understaffed relative to its peers, or you're doing more work with less staff. It's a great data point to include for hiring. And finally, of course, strategic planning and reporting. Which metrics can help you demonstrate progress towards strategic goals and contributions to the institution's mission, particularly in areas like student success or research? What other data can you use to complement these core output measures? For example, In referring to the number of presentations to groups and attendance at those presentations, you may also reference results from Project Outcome for Academic Libraries, which measures 4 key outcomes for students: knowledge, confidence, application or behavior change, and awareness. And we totally understand that the survey output measures that we collect on the ACRL survey cannot tell the whole story. How much libraries do matter, but so do broader stories of how that work makes a difference at the individual institutions and for the higher education sector at large. Bringing these different pieces of evidence together can help the academic library field tell its story and highlight the essential work that we do. So speaking of, the 2024 survey is still open until March 31st. And again, this survey includes a trends section focused on open access initiatives, as well as a special section on accessibility for library facilities. As again, your participation helps your library, your participation helps your peers, and your participation helps the field at large. If you have not logged in to start the 2024 survey, we really urge you to. The more data we get, the better it is for all academic libraries. So thank you so much for joining us today. I see we have some more questions, but if after this presentation is over, you have any questions, please email us at acrlbenchmark@ala.org. Okay. I see lots of good comments. Thank you. Sarah asks about our user agreement. Yes, we still have an indemnification clause. If your individual institution has specific user agreement needs, please email us and we will work with you as much as we can. Lacey recommends that we should include the iPads IDs in the data downloads. Thank you for that feedback. We will take it under consideration. Let's see, Harvey asked, are we able to look at survey data from MSIs, specifically HBCUs? We do allow, if you purchase a benchmark subscription, you can filter the data by special designation. So that's HBCU, Hispanic serving, land grant, minority serving, tribal colleges, and women's colleges.
And here's where, I mean, that's a perfect plug for encouraging people to do the survey, right? Because the data set is only as robust as the institutions who reply. And for those of you who received an invitation and have started but not completed or haven't started, you're likely to get a polite but nudgy email from one of us on the editorial board in the next few weeks, encouraging you to go ahead and complete it.
Yes, and Rhonda, thank you for putting a plug in the chat. I do want to shout out to her that Benchmark is aligned for the ACRL standards for libraries and education. That's the framework we've used to organize the data dashboards. ACRL does offer a roadshow workshop on the standards if you're interested in investigating that further. Any other questions? Feel free to pop them into the chat. Lacey asks, is there a reason why we can't view the context notes on our peer institutions? We've actually updated that for this year. So starting with the 2024 survey, you will be able to see the contextual notes that other survey participants leave on survey sections. Okay, thank you everyone then for joining us for this short but sweet presentation on the 2023 survey data results. If you have any questions on the report or the survey moving forward, please do not hesitate to reach out. And if you are attending the ACRL conference in April in Minneapolis, please do find me to chat about anything survey related. So thank you to my colleagues, Brian and Celia, for joining me on this webinar, and have a good day, everyone.